Welcome to the Football Happy Hour here on CBS Sports HQ, and what a way to start the work week. It is Mock Draft Monday. Ryan Wilson's latest NFL mock is up over on CBSSports.com. All 32 picks of that first round are made, and here to give us the whys of those picks, we now welcome in Ryan Wilson alongside Mr. Football Game Plan himself, Emory Hunt. Ryan, let's start top of the board. It's Ikem Ekwonu with the NC State left guard. You said in your mock that you finally convinced yourself that Ekwonu is the best guy for the Jags at number 1. Why?
Well, here's the thing, Jeremy. This draft class is an interesting one in that there are no clear-cut quarterbacks that need to go number 1 overall. Probably the best position is edge rusher, and the Jaguars have drafted edge rusher in the first round of 2 of the last 3 drafts. What they really need is an offensive lineman, and while neither Ekwonu or Evan Neal are probably worth the first overall pick, there's nothing wrong with taking one to fill a need if they're a really good football player, and that's exactly what Ekwonu is. NC State played left guard. There was some talk during the season that he would have to kick inside he played left tackle, excuse me. Some talk during the season that he had to kick inside to guard. And I was watching him play thinking, man, this guy looks like he's just dominating people outside. And I was texting with a scout, and he said, yeah, man, he's a tackle all day long. He's going to be better than Christian Darrisaw, who came out last year as a first-round pick out of Virginia Tech. And look, when I watch him play in the run game, he is basically Dr. Pancake. I want to make that nickname stick because he is just running over guys. He is so athletic for his size. He is great as a pass protector, but when you talk to people around the league, they say he needs to work on cleaning up his pass sets. That's fine because he's doing a pretty good job now as a raw player. So he'll get better once he gets a coach in the NFL. And I feel great about the idea of bringing him to Jacksonville with Doug Peterson now as the head coach, protecting your franchise in Trevor Lawrence, who took a ton of sacks last year. And look, it's not a slam dunk first-round pick like a Joe Burrow or a Trevor Lawrence, but it fills a huge need, and he has a chance to be a really good football player.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Andy Reid in that pump, pass, and kick competition, kind of oversized for the age group, just plow guys all throughout the field, all throughout the play. But if you're Jacksonville, you have to wonder, do you take the tackle or do you double down on tremendous pass rush? You have Josh Allen on one side. Do you go Kayvon Thibodeau or Aiden Hutchinson? You have to ask yourself, is this guy the number 1 overall talent? Because you don't often get the number 1 overall pick if you're the Jaguars, so they have to make sure they get this one right. And this offensive lineman, Ekwonu, better be Jonathan Ogden, better be Orlando Pace. He better be someone that's that much of a difference maker for your football team.
Well, Ryan, if he shows up at the draft in scrubs, you know that the nickname is stuck. He wrestled and ran on the prep relay squad. Imagine 6'4", 320 running at you. Dr. Pancake. Indeed. All right. Next up, the Detroit Lions, the guy that Ryan talked himself out of at number 1, Michigan's Aiden Hutchinson. PFF says he has, quote, stupid good agility for a man his size. Emory, Ryan calls this the easiest pick of the draft.
It's a good pick. And if you're Detroit, you need impact players. So I have no qualms with that one. Maybe not the guy I would go with, but when you look at Hutchinson, I said this back in the summer, he was better than Kwity Paye was last year on tape. So to me, he's the better defensive end. He's someone that can really bring it from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. Doesn't matter when you turn on the game. Whatever rep or whatever quarter you're in, he's going to play like it's the first rep of the game. So I'm a big fan of Aiden Hutchinson and what he brings to the table. He's good on both ends of defense. So if you're Detroit, you need good playmakers. Hutchinson is definitely a good playmaker.
Yeah, it sounds like I love Aiden a little more than Emory, and that's okay. That's what this whole process is about. Some guys I'm going to like more than other folks, and that's why we're here talking about it. Here's the thing with Aiden Hutchinson, and Emory actually touched on this. He got better each and every year. After 2019, there was some buzz around him, and I watched him, and I was like, I don't get it. He's not there yet. Last year was a COVID year, but he flashed, and this year he was on every single snap. And teams knew that he was on, and teams were double-teaming him, and he was still making play after play after play. The issue, Jeremy, is sometimes we talk about, well, has he reached his ceiling? Is there not much left to go until he hits that ceiling? And my response is, look, when you're winning every single pass rep, I don't know how much better you can get anyway. Is David OJABO, whose teammate at Michigan, have a chance to be a better player? Yeah, I guess so, because OJABO's just scratching the surface, and we'll talk about him later. But Hutchinson was downright dominant just about every time he took the field, and that's what you're looking for if you're a Lions team, for example, that needs to get better and get better quickly. I love the idea of him going here. I wouldn't hate the idea of him going first overall, but in Jacksonville, it doesn't feel as huge a need as, say, offensive linemen. So that's why I have him going number 2.
Best defensive end in college football in 2021 had 3 sacks each in 3 different games, considered just uncontrollable when it comes to his edge play last season. All right, the Houston Texans at number 3, and it is offensive tackle Evan Neal out of Alabama for them. Ryan, You have them prioritizing protecting Davis Mills over edge rushers like Kayvon Thibodeaux here.
That's right, Jeremy. In recent mock drafts, I've had Kayvon Thibodeaux going here because he's that good and he's worthy of consideration in these top 2 or 3 picks without question. Evan Neal this week, I like Evan Neal not nearly as much as Ekwonu. It's close, 1 and 1A, but he didn't have as great a season as you wanted him to have, and that's why I have him going behind Ekwonu, but still going 3rd overall. That's nothing to feel bad about. So what are we doing in Houston? Well, they have the new coach in Lovie Smith. He's a defensive guy, but there's no doubt about it. They need that offense to get better. Davis Mills played well down the stretch when he took over for Tyrod Taylor, but he's also playing with no pressure. It wasn't like he was Mac Jones having to win football games to get to the playoffs. He was a guy that was allowed to sling it around, and he had some success. More success would come if you have some protecting him. And Evan Neal is a grown man. He's enormous. We know about the box jump that was all over Twitter over the summer. The athleticism is certainly there. And when I rank him in terms of recent Alabama offensive linemen, Jedrick Wills is clear-cut number 1 for me. First-round pick, went to the Browns. Then there's Evan Neal, not far behind. And then a good ways down is Alex Leatherwood, who in the first round to the Raiders last year probably should have gone in round 2 or maybe a little later than that. Came in as a tackle, was already kicked into guard. But I think Evan Neal, if he can control his weight and continue to play more consistently, is going to be a great player and obviously help the Texans and Davis Mills as soon as he can get there, starting in week 1 next year.
Yeah, and allowed 1 pressure during the entire 2020 college football playoff title run. The same thought process that the Texans employ is the same thought process the Jets are employing at number 4. Protect the quarterback. Charles Cross comes off the board for them here. Emory, what do you think of that selection?
Listen, they have 2 first-round picks, so it's all about acquiring talent. And here's an interesting situation. You have a defensive-minded head football coach. You have one of the best edge rushers sitting right there in Kayvon Thibodeaux, but you want to protect your quarterback. You want to, ensure that investment last year pays off. So I get it from an offensive lineman perspective, and that would give you 3 good O-linemen. You have Charles Cross, you have Elijah Vera Tucker, and you also have Mekhi Becton when he comes back from injury. The question I have is, do you feel comfortable moving Becton or Cross to the right side? We know how tricky that situation can get. We saw how it played out in Baltimore. Ronnie Stanley and Orlando Brown. Brown wanted to continue to play on the left side when Stanley was out. He ultimately got traded to Kansas City. What does that do for the continuity of the offensive line? Because we know it's a different pass set when you're playing from the left side as opposed to playing from the right side. So I understand the pick, but I wonder how that would kind of disrupt the continuity there up front, although Cross is a really good player.
Yeah, he didn't allow any pressures on 66 snaps versus Alabama, a game, of course, that they lost by 40 points. Okay, rounding out the top 5, we finally get to see Kayvon Thibodeaux's name called. He takes his edge rushing ability to the Giants at this spot. Nice upgrade for the G-men here, Emory.
Yeah, this is almost ideal for the Giants. You look at what they're building on that side of the football. Start from the back end, work our way down to the front. You have Xavier McKinney, outstanding safety / corner, slot corner from Alabama that played well when he got back out there on the field. You look at that linebacking core. They're going to get some guys back healthy, but they also nailed one last year with Azeez Ojulari. They have a young one in Ellerson Smith, another second-year player that's going to provide some good bursts off the edge. And now you have Leonard Williams, and you add in someone like a Kayvon Thibodeaux, who's very solid on both ends of defense, to go along with Dexter Lawrence, who's already up there on the inside. This would be a formidable Giants defense, and we still see today in today's game, defense and run game can win you football games. Again, Thibodeaux will be a home run pick for the Giants.
And certainly for a team that struggled putting pressure on the quarterback last season, his 9 sacks and 10 tackles for loss will be a welcome addition to the G-Man. All right, safety Kyle Hamilton has been compared to Derwin James. Ryan, in this mock, you say this is more about a secondary upgrade, pardon the pun, than it is a primary upgrade at this pick.
Yeah, look, the Panthers have needs in the secondary, no doubt about it. They're going to lose a couple guys to free agency that play safety. You still have Jeremy Chin there, but he plays closer to the line of scrimmage. And Kyle Hamilton can do just about everything. He is long. He is fast. He covers a lot of ground. He creates turnovers. He will come up and hit you in the run game. Ideally, there would be one of these offensive linemen here. 3 are already off the board, so that's an X for the Panthers, who desperately need to fix that offensive line. You could go quarterback here. Now, Jason LaConfora has reported in the past that this team loves Kenny Pickett, in part because of the relationship between Matt Rule and Kenny Pickett when Matt Rule was at Temple and recruited him there. But I think if those guys are gone, offensive line, if you're going to pass on a quarterback, perhaps lay one in free agency, get the best player, and the best player is Kyle Hamilton. Like I said, he can do a little bit of everything, In some ways, he reminds me of Isaiah Simmons coming out of Clemson a few years ago. I think he's more versatile in that he can play a little deeper, and he's probably more ready to come in and help right away. Isaiah Simmons struggled a little bit early on in Arizona because he had trouble finding where they wanted him to fit. That's no issue with Kyle Simmons, with Kyle Hamilton here, who could come in on a really young defense that's getting better at all three levels. It starts with Brian Burns up front. I mentioned Jeremy Chin playing more of that linebacker safety role, and then you get Kyle Hamilton on the back end, and now you're making some noise in that defense.
And you look at his size too, 6'4", 220 pounds. I mean, he can't just take on wide receivers. He'll be able to take on the tight ends as well as part of that secondary. All right, the Giants are back at number 7 after grabbing Kayvon Thibodeau on the edge. They take cornerback Ahmad Gardner here. Emory Gardner did not allow a touchdown in his college career.
Yeah, he checks off all the Emory Hunt team boxes. Can you score? Can you take the ball away? That's what he does. And listen, when you look at James Bradbury on one side, you don't know what you're going to get with Adoree Jackson, whether or not he can stay out there healthy on the field. So, yes, you have to address corner. You bring in Wink Martindale. You bring in someone that's aggressive, that has an aggressive mindset. You know what he wants to do out there on the perimeter on defense. He wants to get in your face, and someone like Ahmad Sauce Gardner can definitely do that. And he is someone, again, has tremendous ball skills, ball instincts, ball awareness. You combine that with a defense now that they've added Kayvon Thibodeau in this mock that can get after the quarterback, expect a lot of passes to go back the other way.
And versus Alabama in the college football playoff semifinal, he allowed just 14 yards on 4 targets. Michigan get their second player and second edge player taken in the top 10. Here's edge rusher David OJABO going to the Falcons, Ryan.
Yeah, the Falcons go in a number of directions here. They need to upgrade the edge rush position, no doubt about it. Maybe quarterback is a consideration here, but Matt Ryan's going to play next year because he's going to make so much money. They cut Dante Fowler. He led the team in sacks last year, 4.5. After that, 2 off-ball linebackers were next in terms of sacks, 2 apiece. So they need to upgrade the edge rush position. This division is going to be wide open with Tom Brady gone, with uncertainty, what the Saints are going to do with the quarterback position. So if the defense can improve just a little bit, this defense has been hard to watch at times in recent years for the Falcons, they're going to have a chance. And now, David OJABO played opposite Aiden Hutchinson. You might say, well, that helped his development. Yeah, it probably did. But he also is an insanely athletic edge rusher who is just figuring out how to play. He doesn't quite know yet what he's doing, in much the same way that Odafe Oweh didn't know what he was doing last year coming out of Penn State, and then he went to Baltimore and set it on fire. He had 0 sacks his final year at Penn State. I think OJABO, who had a ton of sacks and a ton of pressures this year, is just scratching the surface. He's going to get better. And you talk to some folks, they think he might end up being better than Hutchinson. More of a risk, but that's why he's not going quite as high. But I still think he's a top 10 talent, and he immediately helps a Falcons team that is desperate for pass rushers.
Well, you look at the sack numbers, too, responsible for 37 pressures over the final 10 games of his college career, along with his 11 sacks. All right, well, the edge picks continue at number 9, Denver, making Jermaine Johnson a Bronco. Emory, he was thought to be a fringe first-rounder. What happened here?
The Senior Bowl happened. That's what happened. I was down there watching practice, and I got a text from a coaching friend of mine that said, hey, man, they're going to block number 11. I'm like, I hope so, because he's been living in the backfield all week long. And when you have those performances in an all-star game setting, and we know one-on-ones is heavily favoring the defensive side of football, but when you go back and put on his tape, he's doing exactly that. When he transferred in from Georgia, he wanted to work on some things. Like you said, he was a fringe first-round pick, but he put together a solid year at Florida State, combined with an excellent Senior Bowl performance, and not just in one-on-ones, in team versus team periods. So he was carrying it over to the real actual action out there on the field and also into the game. So I love the pick here. It could have gone either way. If it was going to go to the Falcons with Johnson, OJABO would have been the pick here. So I like the way Ryan is thinking with this mock draft with these 2 pass rushers.
Yeah, Emory's right on with what happened in the Senior Bowl. And Emory's also making a good point that the one-on-ones are fun to watch, and the defenses usually, it favors them. So that's important to keep in mind. That how did he do in the team drills? He didn't play in the game, Jermaine Johnson. I don't blame him. There's no reason to go out there and get hurt for no reason after 3 days of practice where you couldn't be stopped. And I think it's just a testament to you can have a really good season, but it's what have you done for me lately? Even in the minds of NFL scouts and GMs and coaches, when they see these guys up close and personal, they can have a new affinity for what they weren't certain about perhaps during the fall when they just see them on tape and not in person. I think Jermaine Johnson took full advantage of his opportunity, and in a lot of ways reminds me of Montez Sweat, who came on strong at the Senior Bowl. If not for a heart condition discovered late in the process, he probably would have been a top 15 pick as well. But all-day first-rounder, and Jermaine Johnson definitely deserves it after what he did in Mobile.
Recency bias in sports? What are you talking about? Certainly considered an Iron Man. He averaged 61 snaps per game in 2021. Okay, let's finish the top 10 with the Jets, and we get our first skill player off the board with Drake London, who was a man among boys at USC, Emory.
Yeah, he was doing a great job winning above the rim, and that's what you want if you're a quarterback like Zach Wilson that's going to give you a chance to make a play. Some may call it YOLO balls, but hey, in the football world, you call it giving your receiver a chance to make a play, and that adds a bona fide number one on the outside, and hopefully you get Elijah Moore back healthy because that's your bona fide number two. And if, they can get their other receivers out of the doghouse, I know they were in the doghouse with their coaching staff this season, but giving yourself two good number ones along with a franchise offensive lineman to go with your other franchise offensive lineman. I say the Jets are cleaning up in Ryan Wilson's mock.
His physicality makes up for a lack of speed, certainly. Ryan, what do you think?
No, that's exactly right. And, Emory's talking about the other players, perhaps it trickles down. Denzel Mims is the guy they took in the second round, had a great Senior Bowl a couple years ago, and just hasn't quite put it together yet. Maybe some of the pressure taken off of him allows, with Drake London's arrival and with Elijah Moore coming back, allows Denzel Mims to grow into that role as well. But Drake London, he's the first time, this is the first time I've had him going off as the number one wide receiver. And I spent last week watching him, some of his games, and the Washington State game sticks out because he is just dominating guys. And he's going against guys that get drafted. Jalen Daniels is going to get drafted, and he had a tough afternoon. And there's no crime in that because a lot of folks had tough afternoons against Drake London. He can outrun you. He will high point catch you to death. He's a contested catch guy. He gets in and out of breaks like he's about 5'11". And over the summer, I wasn't crazy about his game, but the more I watch, the more I love. I think he's going to be better than Michael Pittman, who he played along with a few years ago at USC and who's done a great job in Indianapolis. And if he's the first guy to go off the board in the top 15 range, I could see that happening all day long because he's that good.
All right, so that's the top 10 picks with a breakdown from Ryan and Emory. But Ryan, we just wanted to mention here that Caesars has released the odds for the first overall pick for the upcoming NFL draft, and it is Aiden Hutchinson, your number 2 in the latest mock, and Evan Neal, your number 3, that are co-favorites as first name to be called in April. What are your thoughts on the odds released by Caesars here?
Hey, if you like Ike Ekwonu, get the money down now at plus 800 because that feels pretty good. And even Emory's guy, Kayvon Thibodeau, at plus 425 isn't a bad choice. I don't think there's going to be a team trading up to get it to the number 1 pick because there's no quarterbacks worth taking there. But there could certainly be a conversation where Thibodeau or Ekwonu go first. And I think it's actually a better chance Ekwonu goes over Neal. I know that some teams like Ekwonu a little bit better. I don't know how the rest of the teams feel, but right now it feels like it's probably 50-50 on both. And if you are leaning towards Ekwonu, by all means do that. I don't think the books have any inside information that we don't have. And in fact, I think they're probably going on a lot of the things that we're talking about here. So if you have an instinct one way or the other, put your money down and perhaps it'll pay you off in a few months.
Yeah, they've been following your mock each and every week, man. That's where they're laying these eyes. But I'm going to grab those points and grab that value with Kayvon Thibodeau. I just love the player. Love the person. I think he's going to do a great job as a pro.
Yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau, a plus 425. Ike Ekwonu, who is number 1 in the mock draft this week, will get you plus 800. And then, of course, we're getting into the double digits there with Charles Cross, Malik Willis, and Kenny Pickett, 30, 40, and 50 to 1 to come off the board first. All right, so here's a quick recap of Ryan's latest mock, the top 10. Ekwonu comes down first in the latest edition. Aiden Hutchinson at number 2. Kayvon Thibodeau falls to number 5. Giants woeful pass rush. Gladly you'll take him there if he's available. No skill positions taken until number 10. Wide receiver Jake London, the first to go. It is Mock Draft Monday on the Football Happy Hour here on CBS Sports HQ. We're through the top 10 draft picks. Ike Ekwonu comes down first in this edition of the mock. Aiden Hutchinson, number 2. Kayvon Thibodeau falls to the Giants at number 5. No skill positions taken until number 10. Wide receiver Jake London, the first to go. And, of course, the picks all coming from Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, which is up on CBSSports.com. Ryan and Emory Hunt are here to go through the picks. So now we are at number 11, and that pick belongs to the newly minted Washington Commanders. They take the second skill position off the board in quarterback Matt Corral. Taylor Heineke was good, but they do need some help here, Ryan, for this pick.
Right, and Ryan Fitzpatrick never worked out. He was supposed to come in and be the starter. Heineke, as you mentioned, had a good season, but he's probably better suited to be a backup, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. NFL teams need good backups, and Heineke provides that. And then some. I'll be interested to hear what Emory thinks because the quarterback class is one that's wide open. You could have anyone as your favorite of 3 or 4 or 5 guys, and they could go anywhere from 4 or 5 or 6, all the way down to 15 or 16 or 17. And the reality is, Matt Corral is my QB1. I think he has a chance to be a good quarterback, but I wouldn't want you to hold me to that. He got better each and every year at Ole Miss, reduced the interceptions from 2020 to 2021, in part because, as he told us on the Pick Six podcast, he started to understand what defenses were trying to do, adjusted accordingly, and made some plays with his arm. He can also make plays with his feet. He's a really good runner of the football. I think he took a few too many hits in that Lane Kiffin offense, and you have to wonder how that Kiffin offense translates to the next level. So those are all questions that NFL teams will have to answer. But if you told me that he ended up going as QB3, I would understand it, but I like him the best to come into a good situation, not a situation that needs a lot of help around him, like Trevor Lawrence, for example, but come into a relatively stable situation. I think Washington provides that and has a chance to be a good quarterback in the division that, outside of Dallas, and maybe including Dallas, is pretty wide open. So I have him as my first QB off the board, but not till pick 11.
Yeah, here's the thing with him. My comp for him is Taylor Heineke. The reason being is that both guys are reckless runners. And when you look at Matt Corral, man, listen, you're not Herschel Walker. You're not Keith Byers. You're not Robert Del Pino. You don't have to crash into everybody, man. You see, slide, live to play another down. And I think because of his reckless nature, can you trust him being out there for a full 17-game season? But I think he's more of a QB2 than a QB1. And I think he's solid like a Taylor Heineke. Therefore, that's why my comp is for him, is that player. So I wouldn't have taken him in the first round. There's only one quarterback I would take in the first round. We'll get to that guy later.
Yeah, Matt Corral classified by PFF as an athlete who happens to play quarterback. Minnesota Vikings have a new head coach. They have a new general manager. They opt for Derek Stingley Jr. at number 12 in Ryan's latest mock. With Pat P out of contract and Jeff Gladney gone, this is an area of need for the Vikings, isn't it, Emory?
It really is. And again, you look at the Emory Hunt prospect box, you check this box too. Can you score? Can you take the ball away? You can do both. This guy is one that also returns punts, so he gives you some special teams value. That's an added bonus there for him. But you look at someone I think is getting a bad rap right now is Derek Stingley. You look at how A.J. Terrell was going through the process, and everyone kept talking about the Jamar Chase game. I think people are doing that to Derek Stingley. And remember, he was one of the top 3 prospects in the draft coming into the season. I think he's still one of those type players. If you're Minnesota, you're ecstatic to get a guy that can match up against any receiver he's going to face, but also has just as much of a chance to catch the football. There was some talk at LSU that he would have to play wide receiver this year as well to help out that offense. He's that dynamic of a player.
And Emory, you've said this. You can't teach speed, and Stingley Jr. has it. He is not a guy who is going to get outrun. Okay, the third skill selection comes off in the form of wide receiver Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. He's been comped to Deontay Johnson, and he finished strong with almost 400 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns in his final 3 career games. He's no Odell Beckham, but he has a pretty good skill set going to Cleveland here, Ryan.
Funny you should say that. I like the Deontay Johnson comp. I comp him to Odell Beckham, and I sent him to Cleveland just as a slap in the face to Cleveland fans because I'm a Steelers homer, so take that. But here's the thing, man. Garrett Wilson can play. And if you told me he was wide receiver 1, I would believe it all day long because he is special. Now, he plays opposite Chris Olave, and sometimes if you're just a casual viewer, you might get them mixed up. There is no mixing up about it. Don't get it twisted. Garrett Wilson is the best wide receiver in that football team, one of the best wide receivers in the country. His explosiveness in and out of breaks is for real, and every quarterback he's gone up against will tell you as much. I think he has a chance to come in and help that team immediately. Odell Beckham's obviously in Los Angeles. We just won a Super Bowl ring. They have some other options there, but at the end of the day, you need some explosive playmakers. Donovan Peoples-Jones showed a little bit. Jarvis Landry's more of a slot guy. I think he has 1 year left on this deal. Garrett Wilson stretches the field and perhaps makes things easier for Baker Mayfield, making it feel like more 2020 than 2021 when he just seemed to lose his way time and time again, in part because of the injury, but also because it was unclear what Kevin Stefanski was trying to do with that offense. So I think they get back to basics, lean on the running game, and then take deep shots at Garrett Wilson should he end up being there as their pick in the middle of round 1.
And not a bad comparison, Deontay Johnson or Odell Beckham Jr. Okay, Baltimore have the 14th overall selection, and according to Ryan, center Tyler Linderbaum is the choice here, considering the Ravens' line situation. Emory, we pulled up some video of him taking on Tristan Wirfs back in 2017 in a wrestling meet. This is some pretty good tape to have on you taking down Tristan Wirfs.
Listen, man, there are certain prospects in certain programs that you just go sight unseen. If you tell me, hey, we're going to draft a lineman from Iowa, I'm all in. Lineman from Wisconsin, I'm all in. D lineman from Utah, I'm all in. Former football players turned analysts from the University of Louisiana, I'm all in. And so when you look at this player going to that situation in a position of need, he helps stabilize their offensive line. We know Baltimore struggled running the football. They struggle with their pass protection right down the middle, not necessarily on the guards, but the center's not really getting the calls right. There's a lot of miscommunication, and Linderbaum gives them someone that stabilizes that offense. He climbs to the second level rather well, and we know how well they do that in Baltimore. So this is another home run pick for the Ravens by Ryan Wilson, who's by far killing this mock draft.
Yeah, and certainly nice to Linderbaum and Wirfs were rivals when they were wrestling in high school. He was the highest graded center in college football over the past 2 seasons. A good pick for the Ravens there. All right, 3 of the next 6 picks belong to the Philadelphia Eagles, including 2 in a row at 15 and 16, courtesy of the Miami Dolphins and Indianapolis Colts. Ryan, let's start with the edge rusher, Travon Walker from Georgia, who you call a tweener.
Yeah, he's 275, so you can line him up 3, 4, 5 technique, wherever you want, and he can be a difference maker. And, you know, it's hard to get lost at 275, but when you play in that Georgia defense where every single person's getting drafted, probably in the top 100 by the time it's all said and done, you can sort of get lost. But he sticks out even among those guys that are first-round talents. He is that good, and he has a chance to be a truly special player. I think in Philadelphia, where the age is taking a part of their defensive line, and as well as expiring contracts, this would make some sense. The defense needs to get better, and they have 3 first-round picks to do it. I would imagine if the Colts had a time machine, they would go back and say, you know what, you can keep the quarterback there, Carson Wentz. We don't need him, and we'll keep that first-round pick. But the Eagles made the right decision. They have Jalen Hurts. They're moving forward with him, it appears, so why not get better on defense? And you have opportunities to get better on the other side of the football with these 2 other first-round picks as well.
Yeah, let's talk about the next pick, wide receiver Jameson Williams from Alabama. Of course, we remember Williams tore his ACL in the title game. Should be ready to go by October is what they're saying. I mean, is this just too much upside to resist here, Emory?
Not necessarily, and this is where I put my GM hat on and try to game the draft because, again, with first-round picks, you want guys that can step in right away and play immediately. We don't know how explosive he's going to be coming back off that injury. I know Adrian Peterson kind of ruined it for everybody when he came back from his ACL, and we expect everybody to come back from their ACL and be, you know, top caliber like he was. So I would probably pass on the receiver here, go corner with this first-round pick. I know there's a corner here in this first round that I think would be tremendous for Philadelphia, and maybe go back later on in the top of the second and get someone like George Pickens out of Georgia. Give them a big dog out there at wide receiver because, to me, as talented as Williams is, I feel like they have a bunch of these slim, speedy guys. They need a big guy out there like a Drake London, like those guys that can really impose their will. And plus, when you don't have that explosiveness, I worry about Williams right now coming back. And then, again, he can help you this year. If he's coming back in October, who knows where he's going to be by then, if he's going to be mentally ready to go like he was before he had that injury.
All right, so a little disagreement with that pick there. The Chargers, let's go to number 17. It is offensive tackle Kenyon Green for them. Continued bulking of the line here, Ryan.
Yeah, Jeremy, and by the way, Emory's telling on himself because he suffered 2 ACL injuries, so he's saying he came back slower than when he was before the ACL injuries. I've had ACL surgery. I came back faster than ever as a guy in his mid-40s who's playing his old man soccer league. That's disrespectful, Emory. I can't believe you said that about our guy, Jameson Williams. I'm going to take it up with him when we see him at the Combine together. I'm going to say this is the guy that was calling you out, so I'm taking notes. As for Kenyon Green and the Chargers, they're going to lose 3 guys to free agency that play guard, and Kenyon Green can play outside. He can also play inside. But again, the recurring theme is when you have a franchise quarterback, you have to protect him. What did the Chargers do last year? They got Rashawn Slater. There were conversations that his arms were too short. He couldn't play tackle. He dominated as a rookie at tackle. That was a great decision. Now they come back and get Kenyon Green, who can play inside or out. He may kick inside just because they have Bulaga under contract for 1 more year. And again, it strengthens the offensive line, makes Justin Herbert's job easier, makes the running game much easier. And I think at the end of the day, that should be priority number 1. It's fun to get wide recievers, and they could use a wide receiver here. It's fun to get edge rushers, but you have to protect your franchise investment, and they have one in Justin Herbert who's going to be playing there for the next 10, 15 years, it feels like.
Ryan, all I'll ask is you don't tear your knee up doing the gritty when you're at the Combine, all right? He started at right guard, and left tackle in 3 weeks. Did Kenyon Green there for them. All right, the New Orleans Saints are next, and it's a quarterback off the board in Kenny Pickett. On paper, Emory, this really seems like a perfect fit for the Saints.
Yeah. Hey, here's my stance on Kenny Pickett. You know, I've been telling people for 4 years that Kenny Pickett has some juice with him. He could play a little bit. No one said a peep. Now, all of a sudden, this year, everyone wants to talk about Kenny Pickett. No, we're not going to talk about Kenny Pickett. But I see why Ryan made this pick here, because from a situational standpoint, it makes sense. You get Kenny Pickett playing indoors, 8 games or 9 games a year. He won't have to deal with the elements. That's a great thing for him. But the issue is that he's going to be an old rookie. And if you're looking for someone to step in and play right away and give you that kind of veteran presence that doesn't really have upside, you already had that in the building in Jameis Winston. So why draft the rookie here? Got to get better at wide receiver. We don't know if Michael Thomas ever plays again. I forgot he was even in the NFL because he hadn't played in so long. I would go with wide receiver here for New Orleans. Try to re-sign Jameis rather than put your eggs in that rookie basket for someone like Kenny Pickett, who's probably maxed out already as a prospect, so he won't get any better. And you don't want to waste that first round pick, that premier selection, on someone that you already have in the building.
No, those are all great points, Emory. And here's the thing. Our quarterbacks at HQ, Danny Cadell and Brady Quinn, both love Kenny Pickett, but they both love Jameis Winston as the #1 free agent. So I think you're right. I think if you're going to get a quarterback as the Saints, bring back Jameis. He's coming off that ACL injury. He should be ready to go by the start of the season. I think he suffered it on Halloween, October 31st. So he should be good to go. And you know what you have in Jameis. He played much better, of course, in New Orleans than he did in Tampa Bay. Sean Payton's gone. They'll have to sort that out. But in terms of Kenny Pickett, I'm with you. Like, he's a second-round grade for me all day, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, he reminds me in some way of Derek Carr. Derek Carr's a second-round pick. And if you take him top 10 or top 15, and the Panthers might be interested in 6, he's Daniel Jones, and that's just the reality of it. You're overdrafting him. You're putting a lot of pressure on a young man that's going to be asked to do a lot for a bad franchise. And I think what makes sense in New Orleans is that the offensive line is there. The defense is there. You might need some skill position players because of the Mike Thomas situation, but Alvin Kamara will be back. And I think it's a good situation. You're playing indoors, so he has the small hands, which will be a talking point. Will be less of a factor there. You're playing in the South for the most part. So I think it makes sense in terms of fit. But if you're going to take a quarterback and you're the Saints, I think you start with Jameis. If you go in another direction and you're in the draft, I think Kenny Pickett is probably the guy you want in terms of being able to play right away because, as Emory notes, he's 24 years old already.
Pickett broke Jameis's touchdown record. I think Emory just wants Jameis in there for that MVP, right? He wants Jameis to get his MVP, his NFL MVP, which he predicted at the beginning of last season. Pickett was number 6, Ryan, in the mock a week ago. So, I mean, really, there's a toss-up as to where Pickett could end up at this point. All right, we're back in Philadelphia at number 19, and they go defense with linebacker Nakobe Dean, shades of Devin Bush, according to PFF Emory.
Yeah, this makes too much sense for it to actually happen in the draft. We know Philly just is allergic to linebackers. I don't know why, because you watched them this season and they were playing out there with 9 people because there were no linebackers to speak of to make plays. Teams were just gashing them in the run game. Linebackers were lost in pass coverage. Nakobe Dean gives them someone that can stabilize. He's an impact player, a point-and-shoot type linebacker that could run and chase and make plays on both ends of defense. He would make so much sense here for Philly. I don't want to get excited about it happening because I know this will be an offensive lineman or one of them slim, fast wide receivers that they always take instead of the linebacker that can really help their team out because Nakobe Dean is a difference maker.
Unbelievable motor. He's a Camry who believes he's a Ferrari, and he plays like that. All right, lastly here, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're in need of a quarterback, but they go with linebacker Devin Lloyd, according to Ryan. Give us the thought process behind this choice.
Yeah, this is sort of out of the box thinking, and a couple things. So here we go. They need offensive line help. They need quarterback help. They need cornerback help. So they're taking an off-ball linebacker. Devin Lloyd might end up being the first linebacker off the board. I like him just slightly less than Nakobe Dean, but I love them both. He is fantastic in coverage. He will come downhill and pop you in the mouth. And by the way, the Steelers just hired Brian Flores to be the linebackers coach. You mentioned Devin Bush a moment ago, Jeremy. He struggled recovering from that ACL after 1 year, to Emory's point. So he wasn't as electric as he was before the ACL injury. Hopefully year 2 will be better. But you put those two guys together on the field, rejuvenated Devin Bush under Brian Flores, a guy in Devin Lloyd helping out alongside him in terms of the athleticism, and suddenly you're cooking with gas in the middle of that defense. I love the idea of upgrading the middle of that group that struggled at times last year. Schobert wasn't quite what they were hoping for when they traded for him, so they get an upgrade in Devin Lloyd.
Yeah, and a guy who's got a decent football IQ. He's not going to take unnecessary chances. Great stuff, gentlemen. Let's recap picks 11 through 20. Lots of Philadelphia Eagles in this portion of the draft. Of course, they could trade 1 or 2 of these picks away. Who knows? But in Ryan's latest mock, sticking with it. For now, 3 high-end players in Walker, Williams, and Dean. More balance here with a quartet of skill players, 4 defensive players, and 2 linemen off the board.
All right, we're going through Ryan Wilson's latest first-round mock, which you can find on CBSSports.com. Does not have a skill player going in the top 9. The first skill player, Drake London, to the Jets at number 10. And did not have any quarterbacks in the top 10 either. The first quarterback off the board, Matt Corral, 11 to Washington. Also had Kenny Pickett, 18 to the New Orleans Saints. We will get one more quarterback in this first-round mock. Get to that in just a minute. Chris Hassel, joined by Ryan Wilson and Emory Hunt. And we are at number 21, the New England Patriots. Ryan, you have them taking a cornerback, Trent McDuffie, assuming that they don't want to pay J.C. Jackson.
That's exactly right, Chris. And J.C. Jackson's going to make a lot of money this offseason, whether it's in New England or somewhere else. We'll have to wait to see. If he leaves, you need a contingency plan, and Trent McDuffie is not a bad backup plan. He was dominant throughout his Washington career. He has a teammate in Kyler Gordon who's going to get drafted pretty high as well. But he's a little smaller to the ground than Kyler Gordon, who's over 6 feet. But he will hit you like a missile. He is great in coverage. Here you guys see him knocking the ball out against Washington State. And he is also a good cover corner. He plays mostly outside, but he has the athleticism and the ball skills to kick inside if you need that. He feels like a Patriots player, and we say that about guys who are technically and fundamentally sound, and that's McDuffie. Every single time you see him play, he doesn't miss tackles, he doesn't take bad angles, typically has really good reads on the football, and those are all things you like, and that's why he's going to be a first-round pick, and he could even go higher than this, and I would not be surprised.
First in all those categories in the Pac-12, according to Pro Football Focus last season. At number 22, the Raiders taking offensive guard, or maybe a center, or maybe a tackle, Zion Johnson. Emory, Ryan says this guy's versatile. He's played everywhere, pretty much every single position on that offensive line.
Love this fit for the Raiders because, again, at the NFL level, it's about maximizing your 46-man roster on game day. So the more you can do, the better you're going to be. And I know people don't want to stereotype schools and positions, but here's why this is a great pick and a great fit. You look at Boston College, smart institution, playing on the offensive line. You have to be smart to get into Boston College. You also have to be smart to play up front at Boston College. So when you watch Johnson on film, he doesn't make the same mistake twice. You don't fool him twice with different stunts or pressures or twists. So you combine that with the fact he can play center, guard, or tackle. He's going to help solidify that offensive line. This was a home run pick for the Raiders if it happens in real life. But I love the fit here by Ryan.
First team All-American last season. And it appears as though the Raiders and Josh McDaniel are going to move ahead with Derek Carr at quarterback, so get him some protection. Let's go to the Cardinals at number 23. Ryan, you have them taking Bernard Raymond, an offensive tackle. Now, how long before you pull that engagement lever and have the Cardinals draft Kyler's replacement?
Look, man, I'm going to date myself here. I don't understand what kids are up to on their social media platforms. Just don't get on Instagram. Don't say it. You know, tell it to your dog or tell it to your dad or somebody. I don't know. I would imagine he's coming back because for as bad as perhaps he thinks it was in Arizona, it could be a lot worse. Man, they could send you to Houston. You better be careful. Assuming he stays, I'm going to get him some help along the offensive line. DJ Humphrey's in the final year of his deal. Kelvin Beachum is as well. And the offensive line at times struggled, and we saw Kyler running for his life. And I think Bernard Raymond, who is insanely athletic, only been playing the position for 2 years, a former tight end, came over from Austria a few years ago, and he has gotten better each and every year. I was talking to some folks at the Senior Bowl, and they were blown away with how good he got just over the course of the 2021 season. Because, again, he doesn't have a lot of reps in position, but the athleticism is there. He can play in space. He can block for a guy like Kyler Murray, who's running around all the time without the fear of holding for perhaps a slower offensive lineman. So I like the fit here. He's going to have to grow into the role. I get that. But with the way he's improving and the pace with which he's improving, I feel like he's going to be a good football player sooner rather than later. Okay, let's move to number 24 in the Dallas Cowboys. Last season had all those interceptions. They knocked it out of the park with Micah Parsons. Trevon Diggs had all those picks and pick sixes. But, Ryan, a lot of their safeties are no longer under contract, so you have them going with a safety out of Illinois and Kirby Joseph. Man, I love this guy. I got a chance to finally watch him last week since he's going to be at the Combine. And he plays center field, but he is all over the place. And some of the anticipation plays he makes, you don't understand what he's seeing or how he's doing it. It's like he can see into the future. And his ability to meet the football at the player and make a play on the ball, either break up or interception, it happens time and time again. He got lost to play in Illinois, and that happens a lot of times when you play in the Big Ten and play for Illinois. But, man, man, he is an absolute ball hawk, and he will smack you in the mouth in the run game. I love a lot about his game. I'm interested to see what other teams feel about him and whether he ends up going this high. But based on what I saw in the games I watched, I was wholly impressed with him, and I think he would be a great fit in Dallas. As you mentioned, Chris, they're going to be without some of those guys in the back end just because of contract situations.
Highest grade among all FBS safeties, according to PFF. Let's move on to number 25, and it's another safety. Ryan has the Bills going with Daxton Hill out of Michigan. Emory, Ryan says he can line up anywhere. You like the pick?
Love the pick because this fits what the Bills do. They love versatile players. Look at their two safeties, Micah Hyde and also Jordan Poyer. Hill can play both safety spots. We know they love that 3-safety look. This was a great selection based off what the Bills tend to do, especially since he's a guy that can make plays on both sides of defense.
All right, number 26 is just a behemoth of a man, an offensive tackle that Ryan has going to the Tennessee Titans, and it's Daniel Fa'alele, 6'8", 387 measuring at the Senior Bowl. Ryan, is this a guy with a really high ceiling but also a pretty low floor?
I don't know if the floor is that low, Chris, and only because, again, like Bernard Raymond, he hasn't played a ton of football, and what he has done has been pretty impressive, and he needs to make sure the weight's under control, but he moves like a much lighter player, and I think at the end of the day, the Bengals obscured the fact with their lack of offensive line just how bad the Titans' offensive line was, and Ryan Tannehill can attest to as much because he took a beating for much of the season. You have to fix the O-line, and if there's a guy like Fa'alele here, you need to take him because there's no saving Ryan Tannehill unless he's protected. We saw how he struggles in the face of pressure. You give him time, he can play like a top 10, top 15 quarterback.
All right, let's recap 21 through 26 as we continue to move along here in Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft. And it's a bunch of secondary players, a couple of safeties. Also, the Patriots going with cornerback Trent McDuffie out of Washington, with Raiders, Cardinals, and Titans all going with offensive linemen. All right, finishing out the first round mock from Ryan Wilson, which you can find on CBSSports.com. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by Ryan Wilson and Emory Hunt here on CBS Sports HQ. And it's the Bucs at number 27. And Ryan, you have them going with a wide receiver. They might be losing Chris Godwin to free agency, so it's Arkansas wide receiver Treylon Burks.
Yeah, no, I love Treylon Burks' game. He is a huge target. He reminds me in some sense of Anquan Bolden because he's so big, but he runs like he's running a 4.4 out there. He gets by guys in a hurry. He's a high-point catch machine. He can catch it on short and intermediate routes and just run over guys, and he's a huge target, which is exactly what the Buccaneers need because they are losing a ton of guys, including quarterback. I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback here. Perhaps they roll with Blaine Gabbert, re-sign him, or Kyle Trask, who they drafted on day 2 last year. But you have Mike Evans. Chris Godwin's going to be a free agent, and there's not much after that in terms of experience. So I think Treylon Burks makes some sense here if you want to give whoever the quarterback's going to be some options down the field. Gronk might retire as well, and I think Treylon Burks, who plays a lot of slot, can fill some of those routes that Gronk would run, that those tight ends would run in that Buccaneers offense. So I like the fit here, and I like the way he plays. He is only going to get better as he plays more football.
Absolutely. You can tell he played a lot of football growing up. He sacrifices for the catch going deep down the field, and you can get him involved in a wide receiver run game as well.
All right, the Dolphins coming up at number 29. Ryan has them going with a Houston defensive tackle, Logan Hall. Ryan, you say he is unblockable at times.
During the season, he was unblockable. In Senior Bowl, he was unblockable in the one-on-one drills. And we didn't hear a lot about him because he played at Houston. But don't forget, Peyton Turner was a first-round pick last year. And we weren't talking a lot about him, at least in sort of general media draft circles. He is a good football player. I think Logan Hall has a chance to be better than he is. Now, look, they have Jalen Phillips last year who plays on the outside. He had some explosive plays, needs to play a little more consistency. Logan Hall, you can move him anywhere, 3-4-5 technique. They have Christian Wilkins who plays inside. He has 1 more year left on his rookie deal. They could bring him back, obviously, in that 5th-year option. But I think Logan Hall provides some versatility. They would love an offensive lineman here. They've drafted what feels like 50 in the last few drafts and have yet to sort of make it all work. But I think the offensive linemen are pretty tapped out at this point. Maybe you circle back on day 2. And here you take Logan Hall to bolster that defense on the front 4 and get better there where they could stand a little upgrade. Raekwon Davis has been good but not great, and I think Logan Hall helps in that arena.
All right, how about the number 28 spot? And that's where we find the Green Bay Packers. We don't know yet about Aaron Rodgers. Ryan, you have him going to the other side of the ball and a cornerback. Why do you have him taking a corner here in Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson?
because the Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round since 2002. I would love to give him one here. It was Javon Walker, by the way. But it feels like they're tapped on the wide receiver as well. Perhaps a Jahan Dotson makes some sense. I like him more in round 2. So I'm going with Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. Had a great year. Hasn't played a ton of football. I think he had a better year at Clemson than Darian Kendrick, his former teammate, did, who transferred to Georgia. And he can even go higher than this. He's athletic. He tracks the ball well. He's very good at staying in phase with these wide receivers. And he played against some pretty good competition in the ACC. I think in Green Bay, they need to upgrade the secondary. They have Jair Alexander, of course, when you're left in his deal. They'll certainly re-up him, I would imagine. But they have a couple other guys, Rasul Douglas, Kevin King, who are out of contract, and you need to bolster that secondary, whether it includes having Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback or not. And Andrew Booth is a guy a lot, especially a year after drafting Eric Stokes, who had a really good rookie campaign.
All right, jumping to number 30, and it's a guy who I think we've seen in some top 10s of mocks throughout the last year or so. And it's George Karlaftis, the edge rusher out of Purdue, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Emory, why is he no longer looked at as a top half of the first-round pick?
Because people love playing dumb on purpose. This reminds me a lot of the year where Terrell Suggs got drafted, where he had 23.5 sacks his senior season at Arizona State. All you heard was people say, well, he's 6'1". Did you just say he had 23.5 sacks? This dude, Karlaftis, lives in the opposing backfield, has been a stud since day one at Purdue, started as a true freshman. This is a situation where the draft gets dumb. We've seen guys fall. I love this fit for Kansas City. He's very productive. He can play the run equally as he can play the pass or get out to the quarterback. And this is a situation where the Chiefs could land a premier pass rusher by just staying pat, sitting at 30, and racking up a good football player.
We like being dumb on purpose sometimes, don't we? Let's move to number 31, and it's the bridesmaids, the runner-ups. The Cincinnati Bengals drafting 31st and going with an offensive tackle in Ryan's latest mock, Trevor Penning. Emory, out of Northern Iowa. You are Mr. FCS. This is right up your alley.
Yeah, I like him because he looked like he liked fighting, right? And this is someone that fought all week at the Senior Bowl, and you love that nastiness. Yes, that may be some penalties at the NFL level, but Cincinnati needs some nastiness up front. It wouldn't surprise him to see all of these draft picks go along the offensive line. I thought they did a great job in addressing other needs in the draft. Now it's time to focus on the offensive line. You're getting a guy that's coming from a very good program that has produced some stellar offensive linemen in the past. Penning is the next in line.
And you'd think that pick has to be an offensive lineman at this point for Cincinnati. All right, final pick of the first-round mock from Ryan Wilson. It's the Detroit Lions. And Ryan, it's another quarterback, the third and final quarterback of this first round, Malik Willis, who wowed a lot of people at the Senior Bowl that you guys were at.
Yeah, had a great Senior Bowl, Chris. And I think Emory just called me dumb, so I can't wait to hear what he has to say about Malik Willis because I have him going 32. So we'll see how this plays out. I love the fit. Like, I know the Lions didn't win a ton of football games, but they're going in the right direction with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. I think the offensive line is actually pretty good. And Malik Willis doesn't have to play right away because Jared Goff, with that contract, is probably going to play next year. That's all perfect, best-case scenario for Malik Willis, who was asked to do a ton at Liberty, and sometimes it was hard to watch. At other times, the athleticism popped off the screen, and I don't want to be too down on him because we were down on Josh Allen a few years ago, except Pete Prisco apparently. Josh Allen's a good football player, came from a bad program, and I think you have to be patient like that with Malik Willis, and he has a chance to be a really good football player as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. For all the points you made, there were two spots that made a ton of sense for me in round one, and this is the only quarterback that I would take in round one because he has the upside and the talent. If I'm Atlanta, I would probably take Malik Willis. But if I'm Detroit with this second pick, I'm taking Malik Willis because of what you said. He doesn't have to play right away. He's in a good situation with a very good offensive line. We know the depth and talent and explosiveness they have in the backfield. Now you add a +1 that makes it an 11-on-11 game, and Malik Willis to go along with DeAndre Swift and company back there behind him with an improving defense. 2023 will be a great year for Detroit. So this is something that they have to make happen because he's the one that has the upside, the only first-round talent, in my opinion, in this entire draft class.
One of three quarterbacks in Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, but no quarterbacks in the top 10. We have not seen that happen since 2013, that Geno Smith and E.J. Manuel year. Our thanks to Ryan Wilson. You can read much more on his first-round mock on CBSSports.com and Emory Hunt from Sportsline. I'm Chris Hassel. Thanks for watching.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.